The year is 69 AD, and the Roman Empire, the most powerful civilization the world had ever seen, is tearing itself apart. In January, Emperor Galba is surrounded by his own Praetorian Guard in the Roman form and stabbed and beheaded. His head is then mounted on a pole and paraded through the streets of Rome. He had been emperor for just 7 months. The man who replaces him, Otho, lasts 95 days before falling on his own sword after a single lost battle. His replacement, Vitellius, is dragged through the streets by a mob, tortured in public, and thrown into the Tiber River. 3 emperors dead in just under a year. This wasn't a barbarian invasion or a plague. Rome did this entirely to itself. And to understand how the greatest empire in the world ended up here, we need to go back to the man whose failure started it all. When Augustus founded the Roman Empire in 27 BC, he built it on 3 pillars: the Senate's acceptance, the Praetorian Guard's loyalty, and the legion's respect. It was a careful balance of power held together by trust, money, and the unspoken agreement that the man at the top would keep everyone below him paid and respected. However, when Nero became emperor, he systematically destroyed all 3 pillars. He executed senators on invented charges. He drained the treasury on personal extravagance, palaces, performances, vanity projects, while neglecting the military. Senators, officers, and bureaucrats were being executed for all sorts of reasons, breaking down the very system they were meant to protect. By 68 AD, the breaking point had arrived. The legions in Gaul, under their governor Galba, openly revolted, marking the first time in the empire's history that a provincial governor had challenged a sitting emperor with military force. The Praetorian Guard, sensing which way the wind was blowing, abandoned Nero entirely. Without their protection, he had nothing. Nero fled Rome. The Senate declared him a public enemy. On June 9th, 68 AD, he killed himself. But his death created a problem Rome had never faced before. Since Augustus, there had always been a clear line of succession. Nero left none: no heir, no designated successor, no plan. And for the first time in a century, every general in the empire had the same thought at the same time. The throne was empty, and the only qualification needed was an army large enough to take it. The Senate named Galba emperor. He had triggered Nero's fall, commanded the Gallic legions, and represented the old Roman values of discipline and austerity. On paper, he was exactly what Rome needed. In practice, he was a disaster. Galba was 70 years old, rigid, and completely misread the political reality around him. The Praetorian Guard had been promised a substantial bonus for supporting the transition to his rule. Galba refused to pay it. His reasoning was characteristically blunt: "I select my soldiers, I do not buy them." Admirable in principle, catastrophic in 69 AD. He then passed over his ally Otho, who had supported him from the beginning and fully expected to be named successor, and chose someone else entirely. In one decision, he turned his most loyal supporter into his most dangerous enemy. Otho moved immediately. He met with the Praetorian Guard in secret, promised the bonus Galba had refused, and bought their loyalty overnight. On January 15th, 69 AD, Galba was being carried through the Roman Forum when the guard surrounded him. He was pulled from his litter, stabbed, and beheaded. His head mounted on a pole, his body left in the street. 7 months as emperor. That was the price of principle in 69 AD. Otho was proclaimed emperor immediately by the same men who had just killed his predecessor, but not everyone accepted his claim. The Rhine legions, Rome's most battle-hardened fighting force, had already started mobilizing, declaring their own commander-emperor, Aulus Vitellius, a man Roman historians described as lazy, self-indulgent, and spectacularly unsuited for power. None of that mattered. He had the best army in the empire, and in 69 AD, that was the only currency that counted. For the first time in the history of Rome, the empire had 2 emperors. both emperors and their armies collided in northern Italy. At the First Battle of Bedriacum, Otho's forces were defeated by the Rhine legions. But the battle had been closer than expected, and Otho had reinforcements marching. He could have continued, easily. Instead, he gathered his officers and, in an emotional speech, told them the civil war had already cost too many Roman lives. Then, in front of everyone, he fell on his sword. He had been emperor for 95 days. Historians still debate whether that was nobility or exhaustion. Either way, Vitellius entered Rome as its undisputed emperor and proved almost immediately that he had no idea what to do with the position. He threw lavish banquets while the treasury bled dry. He dismissed capable officers and replaced them with favorites who were equally clueless. He had no policy, no strategy, and no awareness of any political events unfolding around him. Towards the east of the empire, the legions of Judea, Egypt, and Syria had been watching everything unfold and decided that this mockery of the emperorship could not go on. They chose their own candidate, their commander Vespasian. Disciplined, experienced, and patient in a way that none of his predecessors had been. For the second time in a single year, Rome had two emperors, and this time neither was stepping aside. Vespasian was everything 69 AD had been missing. He came from a modest Italian family, had risen through the military entirely on merit, and had spent the chaos of the past year in Judea suppressing a revolt, watching, waiting, and moving only when the moment was right. His troops respected him. His officers trusted him. And unlike the three men who had preceded him, he understood that patience was a weapon. His opening move was decisive. He seized control of Egypt, cutting off Rome's grain supply entirely. No grain meant no bread. No bread meant riots in the streets. Vitellius was being strangled economically before a single battle had been fought in the West. Vespasian's second-in-command general, Antonius Primus, didn't wait for further orders. He marched on Rome immediately with the Danube legions. At the Second Battle of Bedriacum, Vitellius's forces were crushed completely. Vitellius tried to negotiate. He tried to abdicate. His own supporters, knowing exactly what Vespasian's victory meant for them, refused to allow it. The fighting moved into Rome itself, street by street, one of the only times in the empire's history that full urban combat had taken place within the city walls. It ended in December 69 AD. Vitellius was found hiding, dragged into the street, tortured by the mob, and thrown into the Tiber, the same river that had swallowed the remains of emperors before him. Vespasian was declared emperor, the 4th of 69 AD. He ruled for 10 years, stabilized the treasury, reformed the military, and founded the Flavian dynasty. One of his first actions was to fix the empty treasury. Vespasian was famously unsentimental about money. He taxed everything, cut wasteful spending, and rebuilt Rome's financial foundations from the ground up, even introducing a tax on public urinals. The military came next. The legions that had spent 69 AD fighting each other needed to be reminded they served Rome, not individual commanders. He made the Senate functional again by bringing it back into governance, filling vacancies with capable men from the provinces, expanding the Senate's composition, and quietly diluting the old aristocratic factions that had made 69 AD possible in the first place. The city had been scarred by the Civil War's street fighting. Vespasian launched the most ambitious construction program Rome had seen in a generation, including the beginning of a building that still stands today, the Colosseum. When death came for him in 79 AD, he died in his bed. Was the year of the four emperors a unique catastrophe, or something Rome had always had coming? Augustus had built a system stable enough to last a century, but it was never built on law or genuine succession. It was built on the fiction that power flowed from institutions, the Senate, the office of emperor, the traditions of Rome. In reality, it flowed from one place, the army. It was only thanks to Vespasian's leadership that the empire was able to stabilize for the time being. But the seed planted in 69 AD kept growing. A century later, Rome would enter the crisis of the 3rd century, 50 years of near collapse, 26 emperors, and an empire that barely held itself together. But that is the story for another time.